The second planet of the Primarchs is, ironically enough, the planet of the third, since, due to Imperial decree, we're never going to know anything about the planet of the second Primarch, or who the second Primarch even was. But this planet is Chemos, and it was once the homeworld of the now traitorous faction known as the Emperor's Children, long before their corruption, to she who thirsts, Slaanesh, the Prince of Pleasure, the one who turned Fulgrim from a phoenix into a snake, and in its ancient past, it was classified as a resource-rich mining world. But by the time of the Great Crusade, it would become a civilized world, and eventually it would, like many of the planets of the traders, be completely and utterly annihilated. Now, the world of Chemos is part of the many habitable worlds within the Ultima Segmentum. In particular, this is within the Aquantine sector, and it was originally settled just prior to the Age of Strife. And due to this, it was highly reliant on interplanetary trade in order to support itself. Unfortunately enough, the Age of Strife and the Eldar's uncontrolled creation of a chaos god led to violent warp storms that cut off human-settled worlds from each other, making travel between star systems functionally impossible. The book, Librum Ex Dominar, one of the few ancient surviving texts from Chemos, shows that the planet was a rather well-off mining colony, but one that didn't have a lot of arable land, so it required constant trade with the other worlds in order to supply itself with proper amounts of food. Unfortunately, during the isolation caused by the warp storms, Chemos became an arid, desolate world. Mining still feasible, but the overall picture was bleak. However, one rather cool thing was that it was, at one point, lit up by a binary star system. That means it had two suns. It's to the point that you'd think that Fulgrim would have grown on a moisture farm. However, due to the dust clouds from the nearby nebula, the planet never truly shone. It was in a perpetual state of dusk. This not only made farming and any form of agriculture significantly more difficult, but it also would cause a large amount of melancholy to be felt by all the residents of the planet. And unfortunately, due to all these stacked debuffs into the planet's existence, most if not all of Chemos' towns and settlements fell to ruin and disrepair. Thousands upon thousands starved, cities burned, crumbling into ash, a once great thriving civilization functionally abandoned, up until the point that only a few factory fortresses remained on the planet, and even then they were slowly starving to death, only staving off the grim totality of their fate, as they would endeavor, in a rather commendable manner, to stretch what little supplies they could into as far as possible. Now, much like the franchise that I shall not be directly mentioning, they did develop ways to farm moisture and huge synthesizers, recycled food. So what you ate yesterday, you'd be eating tomorrow, probably along with old man Fred who passed a couple of days ago, turning waste into a few more hours, maybe a few more days of life. However, this system of subsistence required almost perpetual labor by workers. But when they weren't working, they would scavenge through the ruins of the world, looking for anything that could help them. And that left them with no time for fun, no time for activities, or any real form of culture other than trying to stay alive. On the other hand, this effort led them to discovering Fulgrim, which in the short term would be a great boon, since once finding him in a stasis capsule, Fulgrim would quickly grow into a capable man, one who would be able to fulfill his labor obligations so quickly that he had spare time to start working on improving the world. And on the 15th year from his arrival, Fulgrim had risen through the ranks of the workers to become an engineer and then one of the leading executives of the planet, then controlling one mining guild, then another, then eventually uniting the whole world under him. With his intellect and his organizational skills, Fulgrim was able to not only create great works that helped revitalize the planet, but he elevated humanity within the world, turning Chemos into a bastion of arts, culture, true beauty. In essence, everything it would be during the Great Crusade when they were under the Imperium of man's dominion, allowing it to seamlessly integrate into the Emperor's grand design as one of the most paradise-like worlds within the Imperium. Shortly after this, in 830 M30, from the now blue skies came a bevy of dropships, as Fulgrim's legion had finally come for him. Seeing as Chemos had no formal army, all the Astartes were met with was by Fulgrim's decently equipped and well-trained police forces, along with the general caretakers of the planet. However, the Primarch, recognizing what was going on, told his men to stand down and allowed the visitors into the planet post-haste. And from amongst those warriors marked by the two-headed Aquila, Fulgrim spotted him, his father, the Emperor of Mankind, to whom he knelt without a word. Ironically enough, the original fate of the Emperor's children mirrored that of Chemos, as, unlike its counterparts within the Legionis Astartes, the Third Legion was rather scant. However, with their Primarch found, they were able to, much like the planet itself, make a rebound. And with a planet of rather hardy recruits who had already been elevated to the heights of traditional humanity by Fulgrim, the Third Legion, the Emperor's children, could now recruit and build up its numbers. Now anxious to join his family in the conquest of the galaxy, Fulgrim left a significant cadre of Astartes on the world in order to create a fortress monastery and a recruiting grounds. And with this, Chemos was able to not only supply the Third Legion with a proper army, but with the addition of the Astartes and other imperial resources, Chemos was able to quickly expand its industrial base, becoming not just a planet elevated in culture, but one of the greatest industrial bases within the Ultima Segmentum, and one of the upmost exporters of imperial culture, art, high society, music, you name it, it would likely come from Chemos. In short order, travelers from other worlds no longer even saw the remnants of a crumbling civilization elevated by Fulgrim. Now they saw a veritable paradise planet filled with beautiful forests, shining, wealthy cities, marble palaces. Quite frankly, as opulent could be was the name of the game for Fulgrim and for Chemos. As a side note, this allowed it to produce the majority of the Imperium's scholars, actors, merchants, and some of the most notably beautiful women humanity had fostered. Under Fulgrim's command, with the Imperium's resources, Chemos would become a shining city on a hill. Unfortunately, that would not last forever. And as a side note, Fulgrim, once having left for the Great Crusade, would never return to Chemos proper. He would never see his great works at their utmost in person. After the Horus Heresy and the loss of the side of Fulgrim, the Imperials set out on the Great Scouring, where they would collect their pound of flesh from not just the traders, but from all their worlds and industrial bases. And Imperial forces came in numbers to assault Chemos, and they struck from orbit, intending to destroy the entirety of the Emperor's Children's fortress monastery, which had been established just outside the capital city of Calax. And in the ultimate show of overkill being underrated, they not only bombed the fortress monastery, they used saturation bombardments on the entire area around the fortress monastery, alongside every factory city and all of the world's palaces. In a manner so extreme, no trace of the Third Legion would be left. Following this action, Chemos would be officially quarantined by the Inquisition for the last 10 millennia, meaning that there's no further information on Chemos proper. Not even an official order of exterminatus. It seems that the wrath of the Imperium was so great that they forgot to file their paperwork. One of the greatest sins in the Imperium of mankind. However, due to our knowledge of how extreme the bombardments were, we can safely say that Chemos, once a beautiful, verdant world, was rendered utterly and completely lifeless. And while that would normally be where a planet's story would end, when things involve the favorite pets of the Chaos Gods, such as Fulgrim, Angron, Mortarion, and Magnus, death is not quite the end. Because following the heresy, and bored with the pedestrian malaise brought about by his legion's own interpretation of excess after the Horus Heresy, Fulgrim, now a powerful demon prince of Slaanesh and one of the most destructive forces in the galaxy, isolated himself on a pre-existing Slaaneshi demon world deep within the Eye of Terror. And he would quickly dub it Calax, much like the capital city of the world that he once held dominion over. Now, within this world, he terraformed it into a near mirror copy of Chemos, his former homeworld. And like the drama queen he is, he would replay in perpetuity the circumstances of not only his arrival, but a myriad of battles fought not just on his world, but in others, playing the role of himself or other important figures. And like the old man he is, he used this to relive his glory days, making subtle changes to his former actions or completely going off script, attempting different strategies, different takes on history, writing his own historical fiction, almost always winning. But when the guy got bored and wasn't playing with Keepers of Secrets, demons like Nikari and Shalaxi Hellbane, he would even allow his enemies to win. So much like the demon Primarch that once resided on Chemos, all that's left in the world is a corrupted, bloated, disgusting echo.